Big round of applause for our two candidates, if you wouldn't mind having them come up.
How will you ensure our nation's immigration system includes safe and humane measures for the treatment of immigrants and upholds, our nation's values?
Immigration is a very personal issue for me. My parents are from Mexico, 4 of my siblings are from Mexico. And right after the election, my nephew was concerned that my sister Juanita, my oldest sister, who is a legal permanent resident, would be deported.
My parents came from South Korea in 1974. I know full well the plight and the struggles of immigrants. I know how important and the contributions that immigrants have made to this great country. We've heard time and time again that America is a nation of immigrants. This country was built on the backs and the sacrifices of our immigrant population. We must make sure that we safeguard our immigrant communities at all times. My parents came here in 1974 with $700 each. My dad's first job was at LAX airport, working the luggage as a porter, working the graveyard shift, coming home, taking a nap, and then boom, off to the next job. My mother, the same thing. Shortly thereafter, they saved enough money to open up a little hamburger shack, literally a shack with no ventilation, about 600 square feet, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, no vacation times. You can be sure there are no date nights in that family. That's the struggle that they lived with. These are the things and the stories that I grew up with, and this is the experience that I come from. My parents, through a lot of hard work and through a lot of sacrifices, were able to achieve their piece of that American dream. And as a result, I want to make sure that we give back to a country that has been so good to us and make sure that other immigrants can also participate and live their dreams as we were able to do.
The president's talked about $1 trillion infrastructure spending. His office calls your office and says, what do you need in your district? Are you all of a sudden a Donald Trump fan, or how do you deal with him?
I don't think it's a matter of being a fan or not. I mean, you look at what's best for the 34th district. Part of the job as a Congress member, we go to DC and we vote and we discuss national and international issues. But the other part of the job is to represent the 34th district, which I may add is one of the poorest, if not the poorest district in the entire state of California. This is a district that needs a lot of help. All throughout the district, whether it's Koreatown, Eagle Rock, Boyle Heights, Highland Park, I've met with voters throughout the district, and they are suffering, they are struggling. Everyday folks that are running small businesses, mom and pop operations, they have everyday challenges. And if I have the ability to make sure that without compromising our progressive values, if there's an opportunity to improve the lives of the 34th district residents, make it better today than it was yesterday, I will fully explore that and make sure that happens. Well, certainly, as far as infrastructure, roads is at the top of the list. Make sure roads, public transportation, mass transit is another one that's of a high priority to us. The problem with mass transit in the LA City area is that there aren't enough routes to make it a viable alternative to driving our cars. And so this is one of the things that I would have prioritized, to make sure that we're working with the local government, to make sure that local agencies are dialed in to improve the infrastructure of our local mass transit opportunities.
First, I would make sure that I question what the details are of that package. The thing is, one of the things I learned in Sacramento, the devils are always in the details. And if somebody comes to you and says, this is what I want, you better read the fine print, because you never know what's in it. And that's what you have to be leery of when it comes to Donald Trump. Are they going to have an infrastructure package that is based on fair wages, that makes sure that they're livable wages, that it's using union labor? That's what I want to know. Because it's not just giving money for infrastructure's sake. It's repairing our roads and our railways and our mass transit, but at the same time getting people a good, livable wage through the jobs of those programs. So I would look at infrastructure. Some of the things I would look at is if we could put some money towards revitalizing and restoring the Los Angeles River, connecting 51 miles all the way from Conogo Park to the east side down to Long Beach. And if we do active transportation, there's actually 300 roadways that lead into it with multiple bus routes and multiple light rail routes, that you can create a network that people can ride their bike from their home here in Northeast LA, take the bus, connect to the LA River, go downtown or even to the west side. Imagine that, using a network of transportation that actually is usable for not only people in cars, but people who ride their bikes or take public transportation. That's what I would like to see.
What will you do to create and maintain jobs in the district and ensure that the residents have the skills needed to compete for the jobs of tomorrow?
At the same time, you're right. You need to have vocational training. That is something I would love to see a greater investment at the national level and at the state level, so people can have the skills necessary to compete for the green technology jobs. You know, we have a clean tech center in downtown LA. We have an emerging biotech center here in Cal State LA and USC. So we want to see them actually get trained in order to be able to fulfill those jobs. And you don't always need a college education. You maybe need 2 years of community college, a little technical assistance, and that's how you get into those good paying jobs.
Look, the backbone of the 34th District's small businesses, mom and pop operations, it's the local taco shop, it's the dry cleaners, it's the liquor store on the corner. The backbone is of the 34th District is small businesses. It's these small businesses that create the lion's share of the local jobs. That's what fuels the local economy. So I think as a government, we got to make sure that we're putting resources in the right place to make sure that the local businesses, the everyday folks, are able to succeed. All throughout the district, the folks that I'm meeting with, they're having everyday challenges. I'm the only candidate that has actually run a small business, actually created jobs, and added to the local economy. I understand the challenges that everyday folks face as a result of that experience, and we need to explore ways that we can provide additional capital to local entrepreneurs to help them succeed, to help them expand the local economy, create additional jobs, and that way we can have additional money flowing into the local economy. The SBA administration has been working, but we are not doing enough. We need to figure out additional ways to provide additional credit and provide additional financial sources for local budding entrepreneurs.
On the commission or anywhere else where you've worked with individuals, maybe labor, to try to put something together?
Most people think, wow, that is a very progressive, democratic policy idea. It is, but it acknowledges that no matter where you live, if you're struggling, that you need more help. So I ended up introducing this law, working with Republicans and Democrats. And when it passed the first time in 2002, 0 Republicans voted for it. When my bill passed, it actually got 12 Republican votes. We didn't compromise on our progressive values on the idea that people at the bottom need the most help, should get the most help. What I said is let's structure a program that works for everybody along every rung of the economic ladder. So if we take these ideas and these policy proposals that we passed here in California and try to find out how they're impacting other parts of the country, how they're impacting other parts of our state, no matter if they're represented by a Democrat or Republican, you can bring those folks over. But you have to sit there and listen to understand if they're struggling, if they're feeling pain, if this program isn't working for them. It's just not about protecting the environment. Do you protect the environment and help create good paying jobs for the people throughout the country?
Oh, it happened all the time, but not just on the Planning Commission. In 2011, I was appointed by then Council President Eric Garcetti to serve on the Redistricting Commission. And there's nothing more inherently political and more controversial than redistricting. During that time, I had to balance political interests with the community interests and make sure that we had a sound solution moving forward. On the Planning Commission, it happened all the time. Out of 9 commissioners, everybody has a separate philosophy, a different agenda, and we have to figure out ways how we can push projects through. When we first began in 2013, the mayor gave us a mandate. We had to build 100,000 units by the year 2020. We have a housing crisis in Los Angeles. As a result, we had to do everything we can because you see, while the local population continued to grow, the housing stock did not keep pace. That's why we are in the situation that we're in now. Rents continue to rise and the income is not keeping pace. The 34th District is comprised of about 78% renters. Many of those renters are paying 50% or more of their household income to pay for their rents. The numbers just don't add up. There's not enough money left over for the families to take care of their children and give them the opportunities that many of us were fortunate to have. That's got to change. But time and time again, throughout the Planning Commission, we had to balance so many different competing interests. The business interests with the workers' interests, labor interests, with the environmental interests. And these are the things that I was called upon time and time again to bring together various commissioners on opposite ends of the spectrum so that we could get to a yes and move our city forward.
This district was carried by Bernie Sanders in the primary. Hillary Clinton won the state, but he won this district. I'm sure there are a couple of Bernieites out here in this audience. They had some candidates who didn't make the runoff. And so there's a suspicion, we'll start with you, Assemblyman, since you have the endorsement of every establishment Democrat in the state, that you're a corporate Democrat. You talk a good game, but you're part of the problem in Washington. Dissuade us of the notion that you are too establishment to hear the demands of a new era in the Democratic Party.
If you want a litmus test, that's a litmus test if you're a progressive. That's a litmus test if you're actually able to take on the status quo, right? I earned the endorsement of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, who's chaired by who? Keith Ellison and Raul Grijalva, two members of Congress that were the earliest supporters of Bernie Sanders. Right? So it's not about if you've been elected to office that makes you establishment. It's about what are you willing to put on the line for the people that you represent. In my first year in office, I actually introduced a piece of legislation called AB 880 to tax large corporations that were trying to avoid paying their fair share of either health care coverage for their workers or dropping their hours low enough that they would qualify for Medi-Cal. And I had every single corporation against me. That's including Walmart, the Olive Garden, the Yard House, every single corporation that tries to get out of covering their workers with health care coverage or paying their fair share of taxes. So people know my record. That's why I'm endorsed by all these groups. That's why I'm endorsed by Wendy Carrillo, who is a big supporter and a Bernie crack, right? That's why I've been endorsed by the East Side Progressive Democrats. Right? So this notion of being an establishment, this notion of being a corporate Democrat is just false. It's silly. It doesn't work. It never held up, and that's why I won the primary.
It's more than just a label. It's a way of thinking, it's a way of living, and it's a way of conduct. And Mr. Gomez has time and time again taken on the mantle of being the true progressive in this race. He went from being the establishment guy, fighting against the Bernie guys, and now all of a sudden he somehow became the progressive in the race. If you look at his story, first of all, he came from Riverside into this district. He was airdropped in by the establishment and the special interests simply for the purpose of running for office. He's not the first one, he's not the only one, but time and time again, this is happening all too much, and people in this district are sick and tired of this musical chairs that happens time and time again. Jimmy Gomez is sponsored and funded primarily by special interests and PAC money. About 80% or so of his donors, it's all public record. You could take a look at his donor list. Whether it's Monsanto, whether it's Big Pharma, whether it's big banks, predatory lenders, payday lenders, those that prey upon the minorities and the low-income people in the 34th district. These are the types of corporate interests and special interests that fund my opponent. He talks about being a progressive, and yet, did you know, July 1st, your gas is gonna go up 12 cents per gallon. Diesel gas is gonna go up 20 cents per gallon, thanks to Jimmy Gomez and his friends in Sacramento. There's nothing progressive about a gas tax. Not only are the poor people and working class disproportionately affected by the gas tax, think about it, they're paying once at the pump and also at the stores, because guess what? Now transportation costs, the tractors that are fueling the farms, 20 cents per gallon. Poor people do not drive electric cars. They drive older model vehicles that have very low MPGs. They can't afford to make that switch. I'm sorry. You pay at the pump, and then you pay at their grocery stores time and time again. Poor people that I talk to, they're scared. July, the time is coming when their gas goes up. But yet he wants to call himself a progressive. Why? Because it makes him feel good. We're getting more revenues to pay for our roads. But guess what? We already pay a 38 cents per gallon gas tax. Where is that money going? We need some answers. Sacramento politicians, this is what they do. They take our money and they spend it, and there's no accountability. We need accountability to our taxpayers. We work hard for our money. We work damn hard.
Let me have.
And yet, when we pay the money to the government, there's no accountability. Now they want more money. 38 cents wasn't enough because they misspent it. Now they want 12 cents, 20 cents per gallon. Enough is enough.
Commissioner, since can I have you respond? We normally go to another question, but since he mentioned you specifically, go ahead. You can respond to that, Assemblyman.
First, I know that he wants to act like I'm not a Democrat or not a progressive Democrat. My endorsements speak for themselves, right? How is it that I've taken on all these issues, taken on the corporations, passed paid family leave, increased the minimum wage, protected Planned Parenthood?
What about the money, though? He says that you're taking
and at the same
contributions.
time, that kind of argument is something that a Republican would say, right? So, and our world,
I knew this was coming.
Let's move on. Let's talk about health. In an economically changing and diverse district, how will you ensure Medicare continues to be a viable option for the district's residents?
Well, look, healthcare is at the top of my list of priorities, and here's why. When I was 34 years old, I suffered an aneurysm, and it just so happened that it occurred while I was in between jobs. I was going from one job to another, and during that time, I got hit with this aneurysm, and there was a gap in my coverage. I didn't realize this until day 2 of my hospital stay. I was in the ICU for 2 weeks recovering from this aneurysm. And on day 2 of that stay, a hospital administrator came to me and informed me that there was a gap in my coverage. That was the most horrifying news of my entire life. The fear that it instilled in me. How was I going to deal with this catastrophe? So not only am I dealing with the medical emergency and the medical calamity, I'm trying to figure out how am I going to deal with this financially. Millions of Americans each day have these issues. They are either going to have to file for bankruptcy or for the rest of their life, they have to pay down this debt time and time again. This is an issue. And by the way, if Trump has his way, I'm out of luck. I have a major pre-existing condition. I won't be able to get insurance because under the new proposal, states will be able to opt out. And guess what? People with pre-existing conditions, you're out of luck. That's why nobody will fight harder for health care because of everything that I've gone through. Healthcare is not just a case study. It's not just a statistic for me. I've lived it. And that's why I will fight for each and every one of you to make sure that we have healthcare that's not only accessible, but affordable for all people.
The question is,
healthcare is a personal issue for me. It's actually what drove me to get into politics. I grew up, my parents worked 4 or 5 jobs to make ends meet, but we never had health insurance. And when I was about 7 years old, I ended up getting sick with pneumonia, and it almost bankrupted my family because I ended up in the hospital. And I know the struggle that parents have to make when they don't have health insurance and they have to wait to see if a kid gets worse or they get better before they take them in. It is that waiting that is dangerous. It's that waiting that puts that stress on that family. So I believe that you got to fight to protect the Affordable Care Act. You got to fight and take a hard line to make sure that there's no drawdowns and no rollbacks when it comes to Medicaid. Make sure that we have the covered California still intact. My opponent likes to act now like he is going to be defending the Affordable Care Act. But in a questionnaire to the LA Times, he wrote that he would negotiate with the Republicans and Donald Trump on just how to repeal it. He said that he would try to do a few things. One of them was pre-existing conditions, which is a good start. Other thing, he wanted to replace any cuts in Medicaid with catastrophic care. But when you think of that, you don't understand Medicaid. Because Medicaid is to make sure that you have preventative care, make sure that you can go to a hospital before anything gets serious and anything gets worse.
You were mentioned, Commissioner, so go ahead and respond to that.
Yeah, look, in case you haven't noticed, we have a numbers problem in Congress, okay? We don't have the numbers. So until we get the numbers, okay, until we're able to take back the House, we're going to have to talk to the other side and make sure that, look, we have to talk and we have to figure out where we can push and where we can pull. That's what I've been doing all my career on behalf of my clients as an attorney, as a public interest attorney, fighting on behalf of the little people, oftentimes against defying the odds and making sure that we can figure out how to make the best position out of a bad situation. And right about now, it's a great time to send an attorney to Washington, D.C., by the way, because until we get our numbers back in Congress, the way we're going to fight back is through legal channels.
So when the continuing resolution was under consideration, Donald Trump wanted to cut every single program, right? Meals on Wheels for seniors, free lunch program, the National Institute of Health, the arts. He wanted to cut everything.
So Senator Sanders was big in favor of single payer. Yes or no? In favor of a national single payer plan?
The immediate fight is protecting the ACA, make sure that the key provisions are safeguarded at all times. I think the ultimate goal is to get to a system like single payer where we have universal health care that's accessible and affordable for all people. I will caution, however, that we got to make sure that we keep our costs under control. But as long as we have special interests like private insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies that are funding the likes of my opponent, we are never going to get there. We're never going to get there. When we have, like my opponent, that's taken so much of that special interest money, how can he possibly, think about it, when you've taken tens of thousands of dollars from Big Pharma, how can you possibly negotiate against those companies on behalf of the people? The number one complaint I hear, in particular from seniors that have health care, by the way, is that they say that their prescription drugs are not affordable. That's because pharmaceutical companies have an outsized role with their influence because of the special interest money they provide for people like my opponent. That's what we have to change, and that's why I'm running.
You can respond, Assemblyman.
If I was such a corporate Democrat, why would the California Nurses Association, one of the leading advocates for a single-payer system, endorse me?
Organizations like the Nurses Union that support single payer can support my opponent because they know that with all the special interest money, it will never become a reality. That's the truth. As long as we have special interest money, big pharma, private insurance companies, we cannot get to a functioning single-payer model. That's why they're able to support him, and that's the truth.
Give me 3 committees you would like to be assigned to if you won this election. If you went to Nancy Pelosi and said, here are my priorities, I want to be on boom, boom, boom.
Well, look, I gotta begin with the statement. If elected, I will be the only Korean American in Congress, the first Democratic Congress member in history, and also only the second in our nation's history. With everything happening in North Korea currently, the situation is very dire, it's very volatile. And I gotta tell you that there's been skirmishes and there's been saber rattling in the past, but this time it feels a little bit different. All throughout the district, North Korea comes up almost all the time. People are legitimately concerned. What we do know is that North Korea currently has several nuclear warheads, but what they haven't figured out yet is how to arm an ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, with the range and capability of hitting faraway targets like London or the continental United States. It's just a matter of time before they develop that capability. This is not hyperbole. It will happen unless the United States and the international community is able to stop it. Now more than ever, we need a Korean American voice in Congress that can act as a bridge between the United States and South Korea to make sure that we dismantle this weapons operation. I can provide that voice, and as a result, my number one priority will be to be on the Foreign Affairs Committee, because that's where I think I can add the most value. And I'll be needed by not just Democrats, but Republicans alike. And that's how I'm going to be effective on day one.
I would ask for the subcommittee on Health and Human Services, because healthcare is such an important issue for the 34th Congressional District. We've seen the greatest increase of insured Californians in this congressional district than any other congressional district in the entire country. So Health and Human Services would be my number 1 choice. Natural Resources would be my number 2 choice. And my last choice would be the Oversight Committee, because that's where we could keep the Republicans' feet to the fire. That's where I get to make sure that I take a hard stand against any kind of policy, and that's when I get to really hold the administration accountable for a lot of their unconstitutional acts. So I would love to be on those 3 committees.
What programs do you plan on implementing to help curb this effect?
As I mentioned earlier, Los Angeles, we are in the midst of a housing crisis, and a lot of that has to do with the shortage of housing that we have. And so we have made a lot of progress in terms of building housing units in the city of Los Angeles. But I'll tell you where our failure is that it's not affordable housing that's being built. If you look around all throughout the district, in particular, just look in downtown LA, you see all the cranes and all the buildings that are being built. These are high-rise towers that are being built. And the problem there is that these are luxury apartment units. These are luxury condo units. It's not for the everyday Angelino. The problem is that land prices in LA has gotten so expensive that if you don't do market rate housing, it simply doesn't pencil out. The development community does not have the business incentive to build affordable rate housing. And that's causing additional displacement and the so-called gentrification. Gentrification in and of itself is not a bad word, but the result of that is the displacement. And that's what's causing so many issues for so many working class and poor families throughout the district. What I want to do is focus on more affordable housing projects in the Los Angeles area, in the metro Los Angeles area, so families are not getting displaced. In order to do that, we have to bolster the low-income housing tax credit program, which is in danger under the current administration. We have to provide incentives to the local development community to build more affordable housing units right here in the city of Los Angeles, and in particular, the 34th District.
First, we need to do numerous things, but one of the things that we do need to recognize is that we have an overdevelopment of market rate housing, and we need more affordable housing in this entire region, right? 1.3 million units is not going to be solved. You know, if you don't build here, you actually, people move to the Inland Empire and to the entire region. So you got to make sure that you have a regional plan. That's why it's so important that the state and the local government do their job. Also, we need to make sure that we invest and increase the resources that are going into Section 8. We actually have a 13,000 person backlog in the city of Los Angeles for Section 8 housing, the voucher program. At the same time, I agree with my opponent when it comes to the low-income housing tax credit. That has been one of the most successful tax programs in the history of the United States. First passed by Ronald Reagan, then by George Bush the First, Bill Clinton, and even recently. So we need to make sure that that program is continued. Also, the mortgage, housing deduction, that's another thing. We need to make sure that people that are buying their homes can actually get you still use them as a tax deduction on their taxes. So there's a lot of things we need to do when it comes to affordable housing, and it's not something that's going to be solved overnight. It's not something that's going to be solved only by the federal government.
2 minutes for each one of you for your concluding remarks. Let's start with you.
First, thank you so much for coming out. I've had a good time. Let's give a round of applause to Naleo, Alliance for a Better California, Occidental, as well as Channel 4 and Telemundo. Let's give them a round of applause.
I'll applaud that.
It's been my honor to represent Northeast Los Angeles in the State Assembly for the past 4 years. And if you honor me with your vote, it'll be my honor to represent you in Congress, right? And I'm proud to have the endorsement of a lot of different community leaders. 10 of my former opponents in the primary have endorsed me. Why? Because they know that I'm an elected official that's accessible, that's around in the community, that walks down the street and gets a cup of coffee, that takes a question at a taco stand in the middle of the night to discuss special education, right? They know that that's what I'm like, and that's what I will continue to be like if I'm elected. They know that I roll up my sleeves and I get my hands dirty. They see me produce results. That's why I'm the only candidate endorsed by the California Democratic Party, Javier Becerra, LA Mayor Eric Garcetti, US Senator Kamala Harris, the Sierra Club, Planned Parenthood, NARAL, and even the Los Angeles Times has endorsed me, right? Because they know what I'm going to do when I get to Congress. They know I'm the best prepared. They know I'm going to actually take this fight and make sure that our values are protected. But I want to just say one thing, una más cosa. Quiero decir que necesitamos que votar desde 6 de junio. Si no votamos, Donald Trump and los republicanos van a ganar, right? If we don't vote on June 6th, the Republicans and Donald Trump are going to win, right? So I make this promise to all of you, that if I'm elected, I'm going to represent every single community. Koreatown, MacArthur Park, Pico Union, downtown LA. I'm going to represent Northeast Los Angeles. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to defend our values, and I'm never going to back down. Not 1 inch, not now, not ever. That's my commitment to all of you. Thank you so much.
Commissioner?
Thank you. First of all, I want to, again, thank you for moderating this debate. I want to thank Jimmy Gomez for being here today. You know, it's not easy being a candidate. I have a lot of respect for everything that you've done. And, you know, it's nothing personal. I think Jimmy's a great guy. But it's really a tale of 2 candidates. One is the consummate insider that moved in from Riverside, that was tapped by the powers that be to run specifically for office. I'm the outsider that was from the community, born and raised in this district, lifetime Angelino, and God willing, I'll be here for the rest of my life. I have deep roots to this district, to this community. I understand some of these neighborhoods block by block. As a community activist since 2001, as an attorney serving the community, as a public interest attorney, also as a small business owner myself, I understand the challenges that everyday people in this district face. In addition to that, I'm a two-time LA City Commissioner. I was appointed by Eric Garcetti in 2011 and 2013. So while Mayor Garcetti may have endorsed him, when it came time to helping him run the city, he tapped me on 2 different occasions. I think that says a lot. All the endorsements in this world, quite frankly, aren't going to matter in this election because the people decide. That's what this campaign is all about. It's about bringing people into the fold and giving them the voice and giving them the power. Special interests have dominated and has polluted, tainted, and poisoned the integrity of our political system. Politicians, professional politicians in particular, that take that money are beholden. They cannot work and vote on behalf of the people that they're sworn to serve. It's just how it is. My dad told me at a very early age, there's no such thing as a free lunch. You take that money, you owe them back. I'm so proud of my record because look, you look at my donor list, it's all from individuals just like you. All individuals. That is why, on day one, my allegiance is not to the establishment. By the way, all those endorsements, it comes at a cost. He's gonna owe him something back, a lot of mouths to feed, okay? That's just the reality. He's not a bad guy, that's just how it is. Special interests, big pharma, big banks, predatory lenders, Monsanto. It's all payback time on day one. On day one, I owe the people of the 34th district, and that's it. My allegiance is to you. I'm running to give you a voice, to put the power back into the people, to make change. All throughout the district, people don't care about labels, who's the more progressive, who's more conservative, who's the Latino, who's the Asian. They don't care. They've got problems. What they care about are their wallets, the roof on their heads, how they're gonna feed their kids and educate their kids. That's what they care about more than ever. They want their problems solved. They don't care about labels. That's what I'm here to do. I've been a problem solver all my life. I've been a uniter. That's what we need more than ever, to reconnect the electorate with their elected officials, restore the confidence in our government. Thank you very much. Please vote for Robert Ahn.
Well, I think there was a little illumination here. I have to say, you have two very bright, capable candidates here. Running for office is a very difficult thing. Most people, and you see it up close. We're outside the arena, you're in the arena. So we appreciate you running. You can't have leaders if you don't have people like you who step up to the plate and go to things like this and take all sorts of complaints and all sorts of questions. So thank you very much. A big round of applause for both of them. Assemblyman Jimmy Gomez and Robert Leon. Thank you very much. There's some housekeeping things.